Now, it appears that bankers' bonuses are back, despite Britain still being in the grip of recession, unemployment still rising, and the G20 deals to tackle banking's reckless lending culture. The bumper bonus scheme is alive and well. Charlotte's at the Newshall with details.
Yes, the Wall Street bank Goldman Sachs will later reveal its third quarter profits, estimated at around $5.5 billion. That's around £3.5 billion. And this means that the bank's bonus pool could feasibly reach $23 billion or £14 billion by the end of the year. So what does that mean for its workers here in the UK? Well, Goldman employs some 5,500 people in London, and if the figures are as good as expected, then that means that each worker would be in line to receive an average of over £450,000 in salary and bonuses. Not bad. And Goldman Sachs isn't the only bank doing well. Yesterday, JP Chase revealed that it's set aside around £4.6 billion in the third quarter to pay staff bonuses this year. Now, all this comes as the taxpayer is once again being asked to dig deep to help the banks, with reports that the Chancellor is preparing to give Lloyds Banking Group another £5 billion of public money.
Phew. Well, in the past few minutes, the Prime Minister, who's in the Northwest today, has given his reaction.
Well, we're doing everything in our power to curb this bonus culture. We've signed an agreement internationally with every country that they should clamp down on it. We've reached an agreement with some of our banks in Britain. We're telling the foreign banks who are operating within Britain that they've got to take action as well. We've got powers under the Financial Services Authority to deal with excessive remuneration, which puts the bank at risk. So we are determined to do everything that we can to make sure that there is fairness in remuneration, but there is not the excess and there is no return to the old unacceptable bonus culture of the past.
Gordon Brown there, well here to defend city bonuses. It's Shaun Springer, Chief Executive of Square Mile Services, a remuneration advisory company, one man who's no stranger to bonuses himself, former city boy turned author, Geraint Anderson. Very good morning to you both, gentlemen. If I could start with you, Mr. Anderson, I suppose you've got to admire the bank's brass neck at the very least here. Just a year since the whole system nearly short-circuited, here they are paying out the bonuses again.
Well, I think it's absolutely outrageous. I mean, most people blame the bankers for the crisis, and specifically the bonus culture that encourages reckless short-term gambling. And the message these huge bonuses will be sending out is nothing's changed, it's business as usual. And of course, business as usual means there'll be another crisis like this in the next 10 years. Bankers are greedy, ruthless people. They'll find a means of manipulating the system to their benefit, and I don't think the public are going to be very happy with that. No. Combine that with the fact that taxpayers' money has actually bailed out these banks, either directly in the case of RBS or indirectly, and the situation is made even more galling. And finally, let's not forget, these bankers are making a lot of money because of the crisis they caused. So, corporations that need financial restructuring are having big rights issues. They're getting lots of fees from that. Asset price volatility, their traders are exploiting that. And finally, there is less competition. Bear Stearns, Lehman's, they're not there. So conspiracy theorists might say that some of the big banks, I'm not going to mention any names, are actually going to be benefiting from this and maybe even encourage this crisis.
Well, thank you for that. Let's bring in Shaun Springer here. I mean, this is one of the points that Geraint Anderson was making there. I mean, a lot of these bankers might not be in a job if it hadn't been for the taxpayer, yet a year on they're paying themselves these huge sums.
Well, let's take a wider perspective on this. The City of London, or the financial services, contributes 25% of the Chancellor's revenue. That means for one of every 4 policemen on the streets, that's paid for by the city's profits. 1 in 4 nurses, 1 in 4 teachers. What the general public want is their money back. If you have an electrician who blows up your house with himself inside it, are you after vilifying all the electricians and all the electricity companies, or do you want your house rebuilt? The essential question we have to ask is, how are we going to get out of the recession that we're in? How are people going to get their jobs back? And the fact remains that if the city does well, then the rest of the country does well. OK, that's your argument. Well, Geraint Anderson, bankers do what bankers do is effectively what Mr. Springer is saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's all well and good, but we don't have to encourage a culture that simply creates short-termism. The whole credit crunch we had was based on bankers infecting the world with over $1 trillion of loans that they knew full well would explode at some point. And they did that because they made huge bonuses while their dumb bosses didn't realise that the profits were illusory. What this shows us with these huge new bonuses, nothing changed. They'll be taking note and they'll be working out other means to create vast profits for themselves with no care about society or the economy in general.
It's that moral dimension there, Shaun Springer, that really if you dangle these monstrously large carrots in front of you, you'll take these unnecessary risks and manipulate the system for your own benefit.
You're quite right. But, you know, the first moral question, the first bonus indeed, was an apple hanging off a tree in Eden. As long as man is innovative, he will create wonderful, wonderful life-saving things, and he will also create crises. This is not the first time that man has created a crisis in the financial world. We can look at the South Sea bubble. We can go back to tulips in Amsterdam. It is part of man's nature.
So can I just interrupt there? Is it a price we have to pay for the, as you mentioned there, the huge tax revenues that have been, it must be admitted, have been taken from the city?
You know, bankers are ordinary people, but they are ordinary people who have reached the city through the highest competitive entrance of any profession in the world. We're not just talking about British bankers. 60% of the city is made up of foreign bankers who come over here because of the innovation, the competition, the exposure, and the potential to earn a great deal of money. But I would also stress that with bankers there is an element of a Faustian deal. I will give you my life 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you make me a millionaire at the age of 40.
OK, so they make pots of money. We get some of the tax benefits, and Geraint Anderson, that is the Faustian pact. That is the deal with the devil.
Well, the problem is, when you go into the city, the effective situation is this. You're handed a large amount of cash, other people's cash. You're told to gamble with it. You are told then that if you make profits with it, you keep a portion of that as a bonus. But if you lose the money, it can't come out of your wallet. You're then continually told that the casino will close down at some point, because we were always told the good times won't continue. What is your natural reaction in that context? Okay. It is to make vast bets continually with no care about anyone else.
Well, coming to the end of time, I just want to end with both staying with you, Geraint Anderson. Do you think then there is this halfway house, which effectively are these proposals put forward by the G20, put forward by Gordon Brown and others, to limit, to change bonuses, to turn a lot of them into shares, to make them longer term, and to make them reflect that if things turn bad 3 or 5 years later, you pay them back? Could that work?
I actually think that's exactly what needs to happen. Longer term incentives, the ability to perhaps claw them back, and some tying in with the overall profits of the bank. However, we do need international coordination. The G20 need to get their act together, because if we do it and America does it, then perhaps many kind of bright bankers will just move to Zurich or Dubai, and that is the problem.
Or Asia, as we've seen in the case, I think, of RBS in Singapore, lost a lot of its staff there. I mean, could it work? Could this different arrangement work, Shaun Springer?
Well, this is exactly what is happening, but and here I completely agree with Guy. The playing field has to be even across the world. There's no point in us signing up to something when we have the most to lose. More than any other country in the world, our country depends on revenue from financial services. And if other people don't play by the same rules, whether it be Hong Kong or Dubai or indeed even Dublin or Switzerland, then there's only going to be one substantial loser, and that's going to be the UK, and of course the people who live here.
Can I just ask you, though, I mean, do bankers care about their image? I mean, there are parallels here, not in terms of the sums involved, but parallels with MPs and this expenses, right? I mean, do the bankers give a damn about it?
No. All my ex-colleagues, all my ex-clients, they can all say with hand on heart, this was nothing to do with us. These are guys, nasty guys in mortgage-backed securities and structured finance. They cause the problems. I work in commodities, in forex, in equities or bonds, so don't hassle us. But of course, they're in the same casino. They're just playing at the roulette table rather than at the poker table. And that's why no one takes any blame. There's a complete lack of contrition, and what they're actually doing shows an extraordinary brass neck, in my opinion.
OK, Geraint Anderson, Shaun Springer, thank you both very much indeed. Your views there on the return of the banker's bonus. And that appropriately leads us now to more business news with Anna.
Thanks, Dermot. Yes, and banks, investors, the shares will be watching very